This has been such a full day. I'm sure by now your brain's getting a little bit full. But it's also the time for us to really start thinking about implementation strategies with our partners. Okay, so I want to try something a little bit different to get your attention. If you can hear me, raise your hand. I should have done that the first time. You guys were so fast. All right, here's our next panel. Come on up. Thank you, Dr. Dowder, for doing 2 sessions.
We're back at it for an encore session, you guys. Give it up for the last panel of the day. And it's a girls-only panel. That's how we like to close. I know. I see some racing the roof over there. I see you. Good afternoon again, everybody. My name is Dr. Lara Brady, and I am a senior project manager at the Post-Secondary Pathways and Career Mobility Group at WestEd. Now, I'd love to introduce you to the amazing panel joining us today, and I want to thank you for being here today and diving into such an important topic with us, right in the heart of the Central Valley. Now, with us, we have a great, phenomenal panel for you today. Today, we have joining us, let me go back to page 2. Teresa Hitchcock, Assistant County Administrative Officer with Kern County. We also have, representing the LA Orange County region, we have Dr. Alex Davis, Assistant Vice Chancellor of Economic and Workforce Development and Executive Director of the LAOC Regional Consortium. Joining us locally, we have Dr. Jessica Grimes, Regional Chair and Dean of Economic and Workforce Development, Central Motherlode Regional. You brought your team. And last but not least, we have Deborah Mustaine she's Dean of Economic and Workforce Development and the Executive Director, Economic Development and Entrepreneurship at Riverside Community College District. I love that enthusiasm, thank you. Now, building on what we've learned today, we started the day exploring a little bit about federal initiatives to transform careers into adult education, and then we dove into how we can build intentionality in infusing equity and recovery efforts post-COVID, and what does that look like with an equity lens. During lunch, we explored different ways to bridge the divide between short-term training and longer-term educational pathways, and getting a little bit into the living wage job proposition, and supporting the social and economic mobilities for communities, particularly marginalized communities. And now we are ready to think about what does that economic growth and prosperity look like with an equity lens and partnering with regional consortiums. And specifically building on the last panel, which focused on the role of community colleges in providing a baccalaureate degree for durable living wage jobs for minoritized students. This reminded me of a tweet, and as a millennial, as a tweeter, I have to confess, I came across with a tweet that says, stop thinking about a better future of work, start thinking about a better future of living. And I feel that that's very applicable to our discussion today. So with all of this in mind, I want to get started with the first question. I will start with you, Teresa. I'm wondering if you can start us thinking about what are some of the unique factors affecting higher education and the economy in your region, particularly for adults from the most marginalized communities?
So I want to begin by saying thank you to the Kern Community College District for bringing this here. It's so incredibly important that we get together and talk about these things on kind of that 30,000-foot level, and then work towards what we need to do in our different local areas in order to address some of these major issues. For us, I'm with the local workforce board. It's incredibly important for us to work regionally because, as you all know, our economies don't stop at those geographic or jurisdictional borders. Folks migrate, businesses have different locations in different areas, and we need to make sure that as we're training folks that those things mean the same thing in different areas. That in our region, when someone has an associate's degree in a certain occupation, that translates to the same thing in Bakersfield that translates in Merced, so that an employer has a surety that they are getting a well-trained applicant for their job. And what that means for our folks who are coming out of some of our training programs is that they are recognized when they go to apply. The employer automatically says this person's qualified for this job, and now they're only looking to see if they're fit for their company. So it's incredibly important that we talk together, that we really work to make sure that the things that we are training folks in translate across borders and jurisdictions. And from the workforce board perspective, we don't train people. We connect our participants into various training programs based on their skills, abilities, and interests. And so we work with a number of training partners. The Kern Community College District, of course, is a huge training partner for us, and we send lots of people there. But we also work with our local adult school, who has some wonderful programs for some of our participants as well. And then also our local CSUB. Believe it or not, we have sent folks for certificate training there too. So really taking a look at how we coordinate across all of these different programs and make sure that we're providing that opportunity. I mean, we've been talking about equity all day, and that's really what it's about, is making sure that we're tying folks into the best opportunity for them.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we could dig into the same questions for the community college, for the regional consortium. And I'm going to pose this question a little bit different. With so many unique factors impacting the regions in California, particularly your most marginalized communities, can you please share a little bit about the internal structure or the ecosystem of your regional collaborative and how it supports its members? Thinking about how you're fostering collaboration between community colleges and regional industry stakeholders?
Yeah. Should I start? But I do want to correct my title. It's hard being the first. I was the former LAOC RC executive director. Now I'm just with Orange County. So
Thank you for that.
we have people watching, so I want to make sure they understand I'm not trying to represent LA. I'm glad that Teresa's here, because having the RPUs to work side by side with, we're just natural partners. And our regional consortia provides an infrastructure in partnership with the Chancellor's Office so that we are able to implement the economic and workforce development initiatives, the Strong Workforce program initiatives. I'm sure that most of you probably have heard of Strong Workforce. And also around the Perkins Act. And so as the clearinghouse for all of the new career technical education programs that come through our regional consortia so they can go up to the Chancellor's Office, it's really critical that we work with our ecosystem partners and stay abreast at what's happening in business and industry, and making sure that our faculty, right, are listening to the voices of employer partners. And our Workforce Development Board partners have a direct connection to our employers out there. And so, as Teresa was mentioning, oftentimes we receive the participants for training, and then once the participants go through that training, then we send them back over to our Workforce Development Board partners to be placed. But also, we make sure that we are connected to our community. We make sure that we are looking for opportunities to onboard new partners to bring into the regional consortium, having knowledge about where the capacity is to do the training. We consider our colleges the premier training providers for entry-level and middle-level skilled jobs. And so we have to stay connected to our Center of Excellence, right? They provide us with labor market data so that we are creating programs that are responsive to undersupply of completers. We want to make sure we're not doing programs that have an oversaturation. And so a lot of that organization and coordination and collaboration comes through our regional consortium and our infrastructure. Yes.
Yeah, and I would just add that, to your point about it being an ecosystem, it's really about taking the guided pathways framework and kind of broadening it out or scaling it out to the region. So the Central Mother Lode Regional Consortium represents 15 colleges. Pre-COVID, we were educating about 107,500 students. 86% of those students were socioeconomically disadvantaged, And the outcomes data shows that in terms of completion, it was kind of like a correlation between having access to financial aid or not in terms of completion data. So when we think about the types of collaboration and partnerships at the regional consortia level, a lot of times we're looking at our students and understanding what their challenges are and collectively planning what types of interventions and programs we need to implement or maybe innovate so that we're better serving our students. So I just want to go a little bit back to your question because I do think it's important for our region. The Central Valley Mother Lode is kind of unique in that we're a little, I will say it's an opportunity rather than a challenge. We have about 12%, 12% hold a bachelor's degree, which is different from the state, which is 21%. 8% of our residents hold an associate's degree compared to the state, which is 23%. And then 11% of our folks here have a 9th grade education. This is all an opportunity, in my opinion, in terms of the post-pandemic recovery. And so when we're talking about that ecosystem, that includes the Centers of Excellence, which gives us information about labor market information. When we're talking about community-based organizations who are the trusted messengers that reach maybe underrepresented communities that maybe perhaps we need to do a better job of establishing relationships with so that they feel that sense of belonging when they come to our colleges. All of our plans, all of our projects with the Strong Workforce Program are tailored to help move the needle in that space.
Thank you so much for that. I love how you put the onus on the institution and not on the students. Really appreciate that. Dr. Mustaine, anything to add in terms of intervening factors in your region?
I just want to give an idea of the region. I represent the Inland Empire, and I'm here playing the role of Julie Pekkanen today. So for those of you who know Julie, I'm trying to fill her shoes in explaining what the Inland Empire is and what we're doing. So how many of you have been to Coachella? Stagecoach? No? Okay. How many of you have driven on the 15 and gone to Las Vegas? Okay. Right before you left California, you were in San Bernardino County. How many of you have been to the LA Fair? So that's on the western side. So we have 27,000 square miles, 4.6 million residents, going to 7 million residents in less than 30 years. We have a couple of freeways that are a little overcrowded at this point, and they're all going west into LA County and Orange County, a few of them going into San Diego County. So we have the challenge of keeping our local kids and students at home. They're leaving us, we have the brain drain going on, and we really have to be intentional about creating an economy that will really help them to stay in the Inland Empire. We are known for cheap dirt. And I don't say that disparagingly, but that's kind of our thing. And as a result of that, we have had a lot of industries that wouldn't be placed on the coast. So the Inland Empire is very much like the Central Valley. Our demographics are similar, our bachelor's degree attainment is similar, our poverty rates are similar, and so we associate with Inland California very closely, and we're so happy to be here today because we know we struggle with many of the same challenges that you do. So I would say in the Inland Empire, we're really trying to figure out how do we create an economy when we have so much logistics and goods movement in the Inland Empire that has good and quality jobs? How do we diversify the economy? And how do we address things like, we've just put, I don't know, giant warehouses, like over 1 million square feet on all of our farmland. So who's gonna feed our people? Thankfully, you guys are still here and you still have farmland. But at some point, we're gonna run out of farmland and we're just gonna have Amazon warehouses. So, you know, what's going to happen to us if we don't start thinking about diversifying our economy? How do we create those local supply chains, and how do we create good and quality jobs for our residents in the region and keep them from leaving us for other counties, which are nice, but not as nice as us? So.
Thank you for that, and I hope we're not surrounded by Amazon warehouses anytime soon. But I love to get into the supports provided within each of your regional contexts. Thank you so much for setting up the stage in terms of the innovating factors affecting your spaces. But we're seeing so many innovative initiatives in the field right now centered on economic mobility for students and their communities, whether that's through guided pathways, vision for success, etc. Please share some of the ways in which you're working in collaboration with or supporting college teams in prioritizing economic mobility for their students and their communities.
I'll start. So I'm glad you asked this question because in Orange County, we are working across the region on an employer engagement regional strategy, which is, ultimate economic impact is getting our students on a path of self-sufficiency, right? So they can get employment, living wage, and then also having a workforce, a talent pipeline that ultimately advances the vision and mission for that company so they can stay globally competitive, right? And so in doing so, an employment engagement strategy is really critical. And so it's not just developed at the regional consortium office. We go out into our member partners in the districts and get some of the best minds at the table to start looking at objectives like work-based learning, apprenticeships, right, and externships for our faculty. We don't want our faculty to just be in the classroom. We want them to be out with employers so they understand that how important employer voice is, right? And so that, that type of collaboration really codifies the buy-in that we need to bring in the right kinds of resources for our students, right? So that we can set them up for success, create a culture of not just training, and not just, I don't want to say not just because all of this is important, but training, transfer, but also employment. I don't know any of our community college students who can afford not to work. And so developing a talent pipeline and working with our employer partners, and we have industry roundtables. We're in conversation with Knox Berry Forum and Disney, Hyundai, Pac-Man, some of the biggest organizations in Orange County so that they understand that we have the ability and the capacity to develop that talent pipeline for them so they don't have to go and outsource for their workforce. So I think that kind of collaboration and ongoing, not just when we need them, but we are engaged with our partners on a monthly basis around the clock, around the year. Let's start there.
So if I could, I'd like to add on to that too, because that's a space where the local workforce board can actually fill in. So you have students who are graduating and you're looking at placing them. You can partner with your local workforce board to help place those students. And we have funding for work experience. As you mentioned, many of them can't afford to be without some sort of
ETPL,
income.
and
Exactly. And so we have ETPL where we can actually pay for training through the community college district. So there are a number of supports that workforce boards can provide for these students so that they can finish their degrees and go on and be successful at their new jobs. So I just like to throw that out there. And as far as local collaboration, one of the things that we've done here locally and the community college has been very involved in is our B3K process, where we've been taking a look at not just what we're doing as far as training, but actually the structure of our economy and what that looks like, because we have a number of things in play here from, as many of you know, our oil industry, our agricultural industry. There are a number of things that are making those industries very volatile right now. The employment situation looks somewhat seasonal and has some volatility in it. So really looking at what other industries might fit with the skills that we have in our local community, how we attract those additional industries in order to diversify the economy and provide better, more stable job opportunities locally for our kids so that we don't have that brain drain, because that is a problem for most of our rural communities, is that kids, they get a degree and then there aren't jobs locally in whatever they're trained in, so they end up going somewhere else. So taking a look at what those skills are that we have locally and how other industries might fit with what we're doing here.
Thank you for that context and that point about connecting and making it so that the brain drain stops. I'm wondering, Dr. Grimes, if there's anything else you want to highlight in terms of support.
Sure. I think I referenced earlier about guided pathways and really kind of making sure that the regional consortium is supportive of the local work. One of the projects that we're really proud of is an open educational resource project where we had a cost savings about $58,000 for our students entering into the spring 22 semester. That's very important because the cost of textbooks can be pretty prohibitive, and I think COVID really kind of highlighted a lot of maybe perhaps barriers that we didn't necessarily know were actually barriers, but were brought to the surface as a result of the pandemic. The other thing that we're really trying to work on in terms of infrastructure is ensuring that our wraparound services are keeping pace with the just-in-time interventions that are necessary to ensure that our students are successful. So providing CTE instructor, professional development, academic career coaching, those types of things around equity, because in my opinion, Guided Pathways is basically challenging us to first know thy student, and when you know thy student, which is students, right, plural, then you're able to really tailor the types of programs that you provide. And so we're trying to get more laser focused on the types of questions that we ask our centers of excellence. Nora mentioned one of the things that we're working on is Verify Viper, and actually institutionalizing that across our region, because it is the bridge between our community colleges as well as our industry to say, these are the credentials that actually matter in terms of career advancement. This is what our industry is actually looking towards. And when you're thinking about the adult learner and they're trying to upskill or reskill, many times you have to have the language of what does this look like in terms of your family and how you're going to be able to support them. So making sure that not only we're providing the bridge, but also communicating to our underrepresented communities what this actually looks like.
Thank you so much for talking about that. Same question to you, Dr. Mustaine. Please share some of the ways in which you're working in collaboration with or supporting college teams in prioritizing economic mobility for their students and their communities.
Great, thank you. Dr. Davis reminded me of something I always try to tell folks. We are not educating any trust fund babies. So the whole idea of education is to help them to get a career and a better career. And sometimes our friends in some of the traditional academic disciplines forget that. And they think they're only teaching a topic for that topic's sake. But really, at the end of the day, all of the folks that we touch and meet are looking to better themselves in some way. And it's generally for a career, to make more money, to be able to provide for their families. So there are two things happening in the Inland Empire that I think are really great. One is the military articulation platform, and some of you in this room are actually involved in that now. It started as a strong workforce project, and it provides credit for prior learning for our nation's veterans. And so I think that's a really great way to help support and serve that community. And I know that we're continuing to expand that statewide. So that's a great example of a successful project that's really meeting the need of a specific community that has served our nation and that we want to turn around and serve back. The other thing that we're doing that I think is going to scale well and seems to be scaling well is our Launch Apprenticeship Network. So we have created what is essentially an apprenticeship intermediary. We are developing new and innovative apprenticeships in some of the industries that we want to see in the Inland Empire, including advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, IT, early childhood education, which is a new one. If any of you are involved in ESEPs and you're participating in that, you know that they're really trying to up the quality of those early childhood education opportunities for students. So those are some of the things that we're doing that I think really start to address some of the equity issues. The other one thing I would say is that we're trying to be really cognizant of the ways that students can get free college. And I think that that's something that we don't sell enough as a system. There are lots of ways for students to get free college. Apprenticeship is one way. Promise programs are another way. Helping them to get related work experience so that they're able to work and go to school, but those things reinforce each other, I think is really, really important. I don't know how many of you know this, but, and I apologize to our public 4 years that are in here, but if students go to work at Starbucks, they'll pay for an ASU degree. So, I mean, there are lots of ways to help students get where they need to go. We just need to do a better job of packaging and sharing those with our students.
Talk about brain drain if they go to ASU.
I know, but it's free.
But it's not California. Okay. I know folks are getting ready to ask questions for our panelists. So we're going to ask, I have one last question for all four of you. And this is our last question, so we're ready to end it on a high note before any of our audience members get to ask you any questions. So what have you learned and what gives you hope from this work? What is one initiative or partnership you're really excited about in your work right now? How do you see this partnership advancing our shared commitment to connecting students with good jobs with equity? And what are some of the bright spots you are seeing, and how can you support this work moving forward? I know that was a loaded question.
It was.
That's a lot of questions.
Break it down.
I'll take part of the first one.
Happy to repeat it.
So, one thing I've learned is that, and you all may know this as well, is that we're resilient. The community college system is resilient. We got disrupted. We look at how we can do transition onto online learning platforms so that our students wouldn't experience too long of a learning loss, right? And so when I looked at Orange County data, and by the way, we enroll about 10% of the students in the California community colleges. Although we had some adverse impact to about 17,000 of our students, mostly first-generation students, right, when COVID happened. But we also saw an increase of enrollment for our justice-involved individuals, right, individuals who are still incarcerated. That number increased, so we did see others coming back and also going into our non-credit programs, which have saved enrollment, especially at Rancho Santiago Community College District, which is one of the only districts that are up in enrollment right now. So not only do we have an opportunity to go back and say, how can we better serve the first generation students, those students who were receiving CalWORKs resources and care and all of that, but how can we increase the population of our justice involved and our veteran students? And then the other thing is that we are using intermediaries, right? We've got to stay in our lane, right? We are the premier training provider, as I stated. So we've got to make sure that we leverage our RPUs. We are getting more of our programs onto the ETPL so we can be responsive to the SURF grant and the RERP grant, right? To make sure that we are aligning capacity across Orange County. And then we're, like I said before, we're bringing industry right into the conversation with our presidents, right? Our chancellors, our discipline faculty, our deans, right? So that everyone understands where the opportunity is so that we can't let a good crisis go to waste. I'll stop there.
So, I think I lost my mic.
Uh-oh.
So I'm glad you brought up Justice Involved, because I think that is something that really gives me hope, is the work that the community colleges have going on towards non-traditional students. I know locally our current community college district is really meeting folks where they're at rather than waiting for them to come into them. And I'll give you an example. So we have a lot of work going on in our community around homeless populations and trying to get folks re-engaged so that they can find meaningful work and hopefully work their way out of their situation. And we've been working with a nonprofit, CityServe, and we're providing work-based learning dollars, work experience, paying folks. And then the local college district is providing skills training. So by combining those two things, folks are really getting an opportunity to build and hopefully find meaningful work out of it. I know Jody talked about the program earlier, but that's really where we piloted that was, and I know pilot's not a good word for you guys, but for us, we call it proof of concept. So we piloted that with Recycling Lives, and that gave us the proof of concept for that. We're rolling out 6 other programs, especially for these extremely barrier populations where it's not just skills, but it's life experiences that have really left them with very little hope. And I think these programs give them hope and give them opportunity, and that's really where you're providing equity for your community.
Thank you. Talk about supporting Black and brown communities right there. Yes.
Should I bring it home here? Something that I heard today that's been resonating with me all day. Our fates are intertwined. If you said that this morning and you're in the room, I think it was Adam, it just kind of struck me, the work that we're doing here, our fates as communities, our fates as a nation, all of us are intertwined. And we have to think about, how do we really build community? So one of the things that gives me hope is that we're being more honest about who we're not serving. And we're being more honest about the systems that were created that advantage some people and disadvantage other people. Until we get really good at that, I don't think we'll fully be able to serve our communities. And so it takes all of us just being a little more vulnerable, a little more honest, a little more open, a little more curious about the systems that we've created and who we're not serving, and how we really work at serving those folks and serving them well. Not just saying, well, we got them in the door, so good enough. You know, you heard a lot of examples of the supports that are needed and the extra mile that we need to go to really meet them where they are. I just think that we have so much potential in our young people, but we haven't done a great job of connecting them to opportunities that they see themselves meeting their own potential. You know, it's easy to create a program and say, if you build it, they will come. But we don't involve them in that process. And so the more we can involve community members, get their voices at the table when we're creating things for them so that we're creating things with them, I think those are the things that are really, really going to move us forward in meeting that equity goal that we all have.
Wow, that's deep. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because we talked about who our students are, but not so much who our students are not, right? So I like that paradigm shift. Dr. Grimes, I'm wondering if you could share with us what gives you hope?
I think what really gives me hope is the enormous investment that I've seen on the national and state level in initiatives around equity that have elevated whom we want to serve and whom we perhaps need to be a little more accountable to. And I think what I'm super hopeful about is that it's incentivizing intersegmental partnerships on a, I want to say, colossal level. And I think that that's actually an understatement. I think we've always wanted to partner with each other, but we didn't necessarily know how. This gives us the investments to really start thinking from the K-16 and beyond. What does this look like? And not only that, and I'm gonna like kind of wax a little like, you know, I'm gonna get on my soapbox, I'm just gonna give you that caveat right now. I'm a little bit of a data nerd, and I can tell you right now, I went into like this hours-long research thing on Opportunity Atlas, the National Equity Atlas, the Environmental Justice Dashboard, and I love that we see GIS really bringing equity down to the neighborhood level. And we're beginning to see where we have disproportionately impacted populations, what it is that we can see in terms of their parents, their children, and how we can make strategic interventions. A lot of times our data reveals, you know, things that we say, okay, this is where we need to maybe move a needle. But what our data is beginning to do is to render the invisible visible. And that allows us to tailor what we're doing to really meet the need where people are. So for me, that is super exciting. And I'll just end with one thing. So I was at the CCC AOE conference, and I heard a transformational presentation on public-private partnership around business and entrepreneurship with Black and brown businesses in East Oakland. And it was dealing with the impact, over a century impact of redlining and how it had impacted the Black and brown businesses of that area. It percolated to the surface that many of those small business owners were not qualified to receive PPP loans. And so there was the community college that worked with the businesses and started to create a, I guess for lack of a better word, it was like basically a launch pad, if you will, to help those small businesses move beyond maybe a very small income that they were making for themselves. And it's been very successful. The Central Mother Lode Regional Consortium is proud to be a part of the 2.0 pilot. This is something that I believe our colleges and our counties and our cities are really, really wanting to invest in. And so I want to say that while the pandemic has certainly presented us with challenges and disruptions, it's also provided us with tremendous opportunities. And I'm going to shut up now because it's time to be quiet.
No.
Great. I could go on.
Oh, we're asking for more. But your comment about incentivizing intersegmental partnerships reminded me of the massive K16 collaborative work that was just due yesterday for phase 1. I know a lot of people are like, it's complete. And then also, Deborah, you mentioned so many really interesting, juicy pieces, including our fates are intertwined.
I can't take credit for it. Someone else was brilliant this morning, so I'm just borrowing it.
I was going to put a tweet with your name on it, but thank you so much for that. But I'm wondering if the audience has any questions for our phenomenal panelists today. We have a brave soul right there.
Hi, I'm local here to Kern County, and I'm really, really excited to hear you mention GIS, because we just used that to completely transform districts at all levels of government here in the Central Valley. And that gives me a great deal of hope. My question for our panelists is, with all of the investment at the state and federal levels, if there's one thing I saw in the redistricting process, it was profound corruption in elected leadership. Are we going to dump a bunch of money on people who perhaps are not as attuned to the equity pieces that we've all been saying we're committed to today? What types of mechanisms would you recommend to ensure that this equity is authentic, it is deep, it is real, and it's honest? Because I totally agree with Dr. Mustaine on that piece. I appreciate your comments.
I have the strategy. Super simple. Get everyone to vote. Because there are so many people out there, so many young people, so many people who are disenfranchised. We've got to get them to vote. There are more good people than there are bad people. And if we can get the good people out and get them voting, we will change that very thing. And it keeps me awake at night. I doom scroll like nobody's business. Still just reeling from the information yesterday. We can do a better job, but we have to get people to vote. And don't let people give you the, well, you know, nothing ever changes, so I'm not really going to vote, or I'm going to vote for somebody that's going to get 5 votes nationally because I'm making a stand. Like, no, this is not the time to make that stand. This is the time to get good people who want to change the system and who want to make a difference for the everyday person, the communities, the families. Sorry.
Okay.
Gas prices are just incredible. And I just, like, that's one thing that we keep looking at. And then you see record profits, and it's like, how are these okay? Like, if we can just get people to vote, I think we can create a better future. That's my strategy.
And I'll take that from a regional consortia standpoint. I'm probably the one person who is keeping Amazon alive, but that's with my own money. I know I'm keeping somebody in their job. So with the regional consortia, you know, millions and millions of dollars come through our office, right? And we have fiscal agency responsibility and programmatic, but we are required to have a governance structure. And ultimately, our CEOs are the ones who make decisions about the investments. Now, Jessica and I, we are responsible for advising them, right? Providing them with data, with information. Our CEOs just recently approved a guidance framework for developing projects that are relevant and responsive, and they have to be equity focused, and they have to be data informed, right? And so none of the money goes out of our office without the full consent of our CEOs. And they look through those projects. We have an oversight committee who looks through the applications when the projects come in to make sure they're meeting the litmus test, making sure they're following the guiding principles of the strong workforce legislation, making sure that they are meeting the requirements of the CEOs and return on investment, right? Making sure that they are meeting the vision of success metrics and the strong workforce metrics. So there is checks and balances all in, you know, within our processes and how we operate. So just remember, you know, my money is earned and I go and spend it, but their money has no value as far as I'm concerned, other than setting up our students for success.
Any other questions?
Over here.
I was thinking that there are all of these fantastic projects all over the state, but it always strikes me that we have to scale it up. That there's a project here, there's a project there, but we just have to take it to the next level. We have to increase it by order of magnitude. Do you have any ideas how we can do that? And part of that may be coordination.
Yeah, we're prohibited for doing boutique projects. They have to be scalable, as you mentioned. I think the next step, we're beginning to do across the state collaboration with the K-12 strong workforce funding. I think there's an opportunity for us to do the same thing with projects at the community college level as well. So yeah, that's an opportunity. I heard you talking earlier about how you're working with others to scale up your baccalaureate program. So when it works well and you can apply it to another region, another location, why reinvent the wheel?
Right. I just wanted to add that, you know, in terms of your question, and I talked about intersegmental partnerships, that's, you know, borderless, basically. I think that, you know, education was created in a system where we were very localized, and that's not necessarily a problem. I'm always a both and, the local and the regional. But we have opportunities to collaborate across. I think I'm in one of the... I have a really loud voice. Oh, okay. I was just going to say, we have opportunities to actually collaborate across the region. Maybe I just do this real quick.
Yes.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I was just going to say that I'm beginning to see that our collaboration is not just among the colleges that are in an individual consortium, but the regional chairs are having conversations about what common goals do we have, and how can we leverage what we're currently doing to scale up. And I'm beginning to see that that's, when you talk about the future, the more that we're able to partner, to be able to see where we might do interventions together and learn from that, that's a big piece of that. I'm a part of a subcommittee of regional chairs that are looking at equity and data. We're asking ourselves, what are the tools that we're currently using to really understand whom we're serving and what tools need to be created in order to do a better job of serving our students. And that's something that is not unique to the Central Mother Lode Regional Consortium. This is something across consortia. So I think we're really beginning to think bigger because we're reimagining how we actually conduct education, and that's very, very exciting.
Thank you so much. I want to ask folks in joining me in thanking our phenomenal panelists today for sharing all of their work. Thank you, Kathy.
So I get the privilege of closing this out, and I feel like I have to take responsibility for starting something that rolled all through today, which was my quip about death by pilot. And then somehow everyone seemed to feel like piloting was maybe a dangerous thing, and so I want to clarify what that deadly sin actually is. So it's not a condemnation of prototyping. So our engineering faculty will be the first to tell you, you want to try to build something and see if it actually works. In my mind, death by pilot is when we layer on our teams short-term, disconnected, small-scale activities, one after another, after another, after another, until everyone is so exhausted that it becomes impossible to innovate. Or even worse, when we make a little program that serves 25 students of some particular constituency, background, marginalized status, and we say, yep, we got equity done. Look at that, 25 people in our Black Men of Color program. Yep, totally got that. And that is not equity. So when I talk about death by pilot, absolutely go innovate, prototype, be entrepreneurs, take risks, all the things the panelists have been telling you all day long, and then figure out how to make it bigger. Because you are going to be in this position of having unprecedented funding levels. It's still not enough. It's not as much as their four-year partners have, but it's more than we've had before. And to that question about ethics, this is our chance to make sure that we invest those funds, that when we figure out what works, we make sure that it works for all of our students and all of the people we have not been serving. So what I hope is that today, with all of the ideas that flooded through this room, you came up with a couple that you think you might be able to try out with your colleagues. Maybe you made a connection with someone so that you can broaden your circle. You talked to a community-based organization and figured out ways to partner with people to create those programs, with a workforce board, with an adult school. Anyway, this is the future that we get to build together. So thank you so much for spending this day with us, and I hope it was well worth it. Also, thanks to our live stream audience, and have a wonderful rest of your day.